Hi guys! Welcome back to the third part of creepy haunted places in the Chubu region of Japan. You may notice that Aoki is missing even though it's located in Yamanashi Prefecture, but I did that on purpose. I wanted to dedicate another video just for this forest because it's well known worldwide and it deserves a video dedicated all to itself. After this third and final part of the Chubu region, we'll take a breather from our creepy journey across Japan. And so the next one will be a true crime case where a headless body was found in a love hotel in Hokkaido. Before I begin, I wanted to show you this place close to my home of an abandoned building on a tiny island. Hey guys, so there's a port right next to where I live, and take a look at this little island. So apparently someone built a restaurant there. You can see the stairs and everything. Someone built a restaurant there, but I don't think it ever opened its doors. Like either they went bankrupt while they were building it, or yeah, I don't know. I've tried to do some research, but I can't find much information. But geez, look at the beautiful water. I just wanted to share this with you guys. If I could, I would go and explore it, but there's just so much traffic here that, yeah, I think if you get caught, you'll get in big trouble by the police. So, well, that plus I'm scared. How awesome is that? You can see the building there. Yeah, completely abandoned. I forget when it was built, but yeah, it's one of these places that if you were brave enough, you would go to explore it. And look at the water. Beautiful Okinawa. Yeah, looks completely dilapidated inside, that's for sure. Alright, as usual, I've included links to Japanese YouTubers visiting the following haunted places in the description below. Let's get started. Location 7. Aoki Pass and Akedoshi Tunnel. Aoki Pass in Matsumoto City, Nagano Prefecture is a well-known haunted location. Among the various eerie elements, the Akedoshi Tunnel in particular is surrounded by numerous rumors. Here's the information often cited as the cause. In the past, a couple attempted suicide by self-immolation inside the tunnel. A number of tragic accidents occurred at the Aoki Pass. Several suicides and missing persons have been reported in the general area. Dumping dead bodies and various disappearances have also occurred at Aoki Pass. Whether these events caused the paranormal activity that have been experienced there is unknown. First, let me talk about Aoki Pass. It's located along National Route 143, stretching across Matsumoto City, Nagano Prefecture. As you move deeper into the mountains, the road suddenly narrows. Because of its remote mountain location and extremely low traffic, if your car or bike breaks down, you're in real trouble. Although there isn't much traffic along it, compared to shadowy, densely wooded mountain roads with no sunlight, it doesn't feel creepy during the day. However, rumors of paranormal activity are concentrated around it. Not only have multiple ghost sightings been reported, but the area is also known for its gruesome past. Let's go over some of the incidents that have occurred there. Number 1. The missing woman case. There are reports of a woman who went missing at Aoki Pass. The source is unclear, but the following events are said to have occurred. A woman went missing. A search began at Aoki Pass. A burnt-out car believed to be hers was found. Number 2. Suicides at Aoki Pass. There appear to be a fair number of suicides here. Although there's no concrete source, it's not uncommon for bodies to be found there. It's a place similar to Aokigahara, the infamous suicide forest, so it's likely that many of them go undetected. The Aokigahara forest, by the way, is just over a 2-hour drive from Aoki Pass. Number 3. Mother and child dismemberment murder case, 1989. I'll go over this case in a bit of detail. On May 13, 1989, a forestry worker discovered the bodies of a woman and a small boy on a steep slope near National Route 143, close to Aoki Pass in Honjo Village, Nagano Prefecture. The woman's body had been dismembered into 11 pieces and placed in black garbage bags. One of the bags had ripped open, exposing part of the remains. Clues like the clothes of the victim, their blood types, the newspaper used to wrap the body parts, and the presence of shikimi, which is a plant used in Buddhist rituals, helped the police begin identifying the victims. On May 15th, while police were trying to identify the victims, Fusao Nemoto, or it could be Nobuo Nemoto, it depends on how the kanji characters are read, but I couldn't find the information in my research. I'll refer to him as Nobuo for this video. So, Nobuo Nemoto, aged 65, lived in Fukushima Prefecture and contacted authorities saying the victims might be his daughter and grandson. After comparing fingerprints with those left at the father's home in Fukushima, the victims were identified as Ayako Abe, age 40, and her 2-year-old son, Hideyuki, who lived in a Funabashi City apartment with her husband, Takashi Abe, aged 32. On May 18th, police searched the Abe apartment. Inside, they found a blood-stained knife believed to have been used for dismemberment and blood traces in the bathroom. They also learned that the husband, Takashi, had rented a car from May 6th to the 9th, and the trunk emitted a foul odor. With him now missing, police issued a nationwide warrant for his arrest on suspicion of murder and corpse abandonment. Witnesses later recalled Takashi visiting a nearby restaurant on May 13th, the day the news of the discovery broke. Borrowing 50,000 yen, or about $350, claiming Ayako's mother was critically ill and they had to go see her. He wanted to borrow money because the banks were closed. And then he vanished the next day. 4 days later, around 3:30 a.m. on May 22nd, a suspicious man who was soaking wet was spotted peering into a police box near Kumamoto Station. When questioned, he confessed, "I killed someone in Nagano." It was Takashi. He had arrived in Kumamoto on May 18th, wandered around Mount Aso and movie theaters, and said he had attempted to drown himself in the Shirakawa River on the 22nd around 2 p.m., but failed. He was carrying 38 photos of his wife and son and had only 77 yen, or about 50 cents, left. Takashi and Ayako were both originally from Koriyama, Fukushima. Ayako had previously married at 20 and had a child, but divorced, left her child with her ex-husband, and began working at an ironworks factory which was owned by Takashi's family. His passionate pursuit led to their marriage in December 1981. 2 years later, they moved to Kashiwa City in Chiba, then Funabashi. His parents were against their union as Ayako was 8 years older than him. In September of 1985, they settled in an apartment in Nishinarashino where the crime occurred. They worked together, sometimes living at pachinko parlors, before Takashi became a truck driver. However, in December 1987, shortly after their son Hideyuki was born, Takashi was in a serious car accident. He was hospitalized for nearly a year and continued to suffer from whiplash injuries. Unable to return to work, the family initially relied on his compensation, but Ayako began working as an insurance saleswoman to support them, earning only around 1.8 million yen per year, or 13,000 US dollars. Under increasing financial strain, Takashi fell into gambling, public horse races, and mahjong, and blew through his compensation. Of course, this was followed by frequent arguments. According to his confession, on May 1st, 1989, around 11 p.m., Takashi hit Ayako twice in the head with a hammer while she slept, then strangled her. He then smothered his son Hideyuki with duct tape over his nose and mouth. He dismembered Ayako's body with a knife and saw in the bathroom and packed the parts into black garbage bags. On May 7th, he loaded the bodies into a rental car's trunk and drove to Aoki Pass in Nagano, an area he knew from his trucking days, and dumped them in the forest. While detailed trial records weren't initially available, it's confirmed that he was sentenced to 18 years in prison by the Chiba District Court. The prosecution had sought 20 years. How appalling is that, guys? He should have gotten life or even the death sentence. What an absolute joke. Alright, back to the main topic. As you can surmise from the history of this place, there's no shortage of ghost stories from the area. Common reports include seeing apparitions, feeling something pull them, and hearing mysterious voices. Though these stories are widely shared, no specific paranormal experiences have been definitively confirmed. However, given the history of the area, it's not something to dismiss outright. While Aoki Pass is popular among cyclists, those who know about it often avoid it. Now, Akedoshi Tunnel. It sits quietly within Aoki Pass and is considered another major haunted spot. The tunnel's reputation as a haunted site is said to stem from the alleged self-immolation of a young couple inside it. Since that event, ghost sightings in the tunnel reportedly increased. However, when I investigated whether this incident actually happened, I couldn't find any credible evidence. Hence, it seems to be a case of a rumor taking on a life of its own. Unlike the confirmed cases at Aoki Pass, the stories about this tunnel remain speculative. So, can this tunnel really be considered a haunted spot? Inside it, it's almost completely pitch dark with uneven walls. Tunnels tend to be dark. They usually look creepy, and if they're isolated somewhere deep in the mountains, rumors suddenly surface of them being haunted. But an interesting fact about this tunnel is that it's the oldest active tunnel on the National Highway, opening way back in the year 1890. However, since Aoki Pass has a proven history of deaths occurring, it pales in comparison. Regardless, some of the rumors surrounding this tunnel include seeing the apparition of a young couple. If you stop your car in the middle of the tunnel, your engine won't start again. And if you honk your horn 3 times while passing through, a ghost will appear in your back seat. When I was in my 20s, I heard all the rumors about Akedoshi Tunnel and how it was a famous haunted spot. As someone who made a hobby out of visiting places like that, I decided to go there with a friend, intentionally, in the dead of night, knowing full well the danger. From here, I'll try to recount as accurately as possible what happened in the tunnel that night. I know most of you might think it's just a typical ghost story. Is any of this even real? To be honest, even I, who experienced it firsthand, still don't know if it was real or not. But there's one thing I know for certain. That cold hand I touched. I still can't forget the feeling, even now that I'm in my 30s. The tunnel is tucked away deep in the mountains. My friend and I drove through the dark, winding mountain roads to get there. There were no street lights. It was pitch black all around us. If the headlights went out, you literally wouldn't be able to see a thing. That's how thick the darkness felt. The scenery didn't change no matter how far we drove. We weren't reaching the tunnel, and the growing fear inside me had me half hoping we'd never find it. But of course, it eventually appeared before us. The area was dead silent. No wind, not even the sound of insects. It was so still, it felt like we'd stepped into another world outside of reality. The tunnel, lit by the car's headlights, looked old and decayed. Cracks and grime covered the walls. Inside, again, there was no light at all. You couldn't see ahead. Every so often, I could hear the sound of water dripping. The complete silence and eerie surroundings only fed my fear. We didn't plan to stay long, so we left the car headlights on and entered the tunnel on foot. Once inside, I could just barely see the exit up ahead, which gave me a small sense of relief. The air was noticeably colder than outside. My body felt like it was sounding an alarm to not go any further. I fought against my feeling of wanting to get out of there and moved forward. It felt like we'd been walking for over an hour, but in reality, we reached the other end within a few minutes. Nothing particularly strange happened on the way through. I remember how relieved I felt, thinking all that was left was to head back the way we came. On the way back, I felt my friend suddenly grab my hand. He must have felt just as scared as I was, but it did feel a bit weird because we were both guys. His hand gripped mine tightly, and it was ice cold. We walked and made it safely back to the tunnel entrance. Finally free from the dim, claustrophobic space, I felt lighter, but the surroundings were still shrouded in a darkness just as deep as the one inside the tunnel. Normally, the car headlights would be shining brightly, guiding us back into the real world. But the headlights and the engine had both turned off. I remembered that some of the rumors about the tunnel involved vehicles. At that moment, a strange mix of excitement of, "It's really happening," and fear washed over me. I quickly put the key into the ignition and turned it, hoping the car would start because there was absolutely no other way to get home. I was expecting the worst, but to my surprise, it started without any trouble, and we were able to drive off. At the end of it all, the only quote-unquote paranormal thing that happened was the car turning off by itself. We didn't see any ghosts, despite what the rumors claimed. I felt both relieved and, admittedly, a little disappointed. Before heading home, we hopped back out the car and took a quick photo at the entrance as a memento. Later, I chatted with my friend about that night while looking at the picture we had taken at Akedoshi Tunnel. That's when I remembered him grabbing onto my hand, and out of curiosity, I asked, "Hey, why did you grab my hand like that on the way back to the entrance? You were pretty shameless, hey?" He looked at me and said, "What are you talking about? I never held your hand." "Wait, your hand? Look at this picture. Your hand's gone." So that is what happened. It makes me wonder, could it have been the dismembered mother or her child that held my hand in the tunnel? For a while after, I got into a couple of minor accidents and experienced sleep paralysis. I don't know if they were caused by that night, but it may very well be. If I can give one piece of advice, it's this. If you ever visit a haunted place, go with the resolve to face whatever may happen to you. Later, as a small gesture of apology, I returned to the site with a bouquet of flowers and a small toy for a child. And since then, the strange phenomena have completely stopped. While heading to Matsumoto City for work, we passed through a tunnel. It was in the middle of the day, the weather clear and sunny. It was a beautiful day. I was sitting in the passenger seat while my coworker drove. The moment we approached Akedoshi Tunnel, I suddenly felt extremely dizzy and I got an uncontrollable wave of goosebumps all over my body. I was gripped by an intense feeling of fear. Up until then, I had no idea this tunnel even existed, but I remembered its name from the fleeting glimpse I got of the sign just before we drove through it. When I got home, I looked it up and was shocked to read about its history and that of Aoki Pass. Even though I knew nothing about it, and even though it was broad daylight, I had such a terrifying experience. There's no way I could ever go there at night. Location 8. Old Kama Tunnel. In Nagano Prefecture, there's a popular tourist destination called Kamikochi, which also serves as a base for climbing the Honzaka mountain range. Now there's a modern tunnel called the Shinkama Tunnel, but back then people had to pass through the Old Kama Tunnel, also known as the Ghost Tunnel or the Tunnel of Terror, and is a notorious haunted location. The construction of the Old Kama Tunnel began in the late Taisho era between 1912 and 1926 and was completed in 1933. It's approximately 520 meters, 0.3 miles long, and is a narrow, winding, dark tunnel with exposed rock walls. The entire thing was dug by hand. People were forced to work under harsh conditions, and many of them lost their lives during the construction. After its completion, mountaineers heading to Kamikochi or Honzaka in the winter had no choice but to trek through carrying heavy winter climbing gear on their backs. It was only 4.3 meters or 14 feet wide, and with fear creeping over them, they had to keep walking, or rather, climbing, since the tunnel itself was a steep, winding incline. While doing so, they would make a conscious effort not to look to the sides or at the rock walls. The reason? The chisel marks from when the tunnel was hand-dug were still clearly visible, and those jagged rock faces often look like faces of the dead. Let's also add in the fact that up until the early Showa period, around 1930, the bodies of climbers who had frozen to death in the winter were sometimes stored inside the tunnel until they could be transported to the side of Matsumoto City between spring and summer. So, with its steep curves and grades, buses could barely squeeze through once the snow melted away. It was a one-lane road with traffic lights on both ends, allowing only alternating traffic. Not only that, there were no lights inside the tunnel. The car headlights barely helped, and the unpaved road made the buses shake violently, making it difficult for the headlights to stay fixed on anything. Bus drivers on the Kamikochi route even said that when the headlights hit the tunnel's rocky walls or curves, faces of the dead would appear in the mirrors or reflected off the windows. Other than when they had mountaineers in the bus after pickups, they would often be empty otherwise. Drivers reported that although no passengers were on board, as the bus shook while driving through the tunnel, they sometimes saw several ghostly figures sitting in the seats. Some even claimed to see a corpse-like face peeking over the seats or a sorrowful dead face staring at them through the rearview mirror. After that, many drivers made a rule: never look in the rearview mirror when you're going through the Kama Tunnel alone. Because of all the above factors, the Old Kama Tunnel eventually earned a fearsome reputation as the tunnel where ghosts appear and the tunnel where the dead rise, and finally became known as a true ghost tunnel and a terrifying haunted location. Later on, the number of tourists and climbers heading to Kamikochi increased year by year, and in order to accommodate the growing demand for car access, paving, lighting installation, and tunnel reinforcement projects were frequently carried out. However, it closed in 2005 and a new one was built. The old one still exists, although there's a big metal gate that blocks the entrance. People have found ways to get in, however, because apparently only one side is closed and there are other ways to enter the tunnel. With the deaths that have occurred here and the dead bodies that have been kept inside, it's not too far-fetched to believe that this tunnel could potentially be truly haunted. I don't believe in ghosts and have always been a skeptic because I've never seen one. This time, my friends and I headed to the old Kama tunnel. It didn't scare me. We rode our motorbikes up to the entrance of the tunnel, and from there we walked through it. It was so dark in there, and it was a constant uphill climb. There were no lights, and as soon as I stepped foot inside, this place felt off. Not normal. Just moments before, the 6 of us had all been talking and laughing, but now it was dead silent. Usually, sounds echo in tunnels, but this one seemed as if it absorbed every sound. I'm the type who jokes around, so I laughed at my scared friends. It was too dark to see clearly, but they remained quiet. I could tell they were really frightened. Nothing happened in particular as we walked through. We exited the tunnel and started heading back, and this time it was even more quiet than before. It felt heavy and depressing, and we finally couldn't take it anymore and decided to go home. I hopped onto my bike and started the engine. As we were driving back, we saw an old woman collapsed on the side of the road. I called an ambulance and they managed to get her safely to a hospital. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedic said to me, "She's real lucky you found her. It's rare to see people coming all alone to a place like this." My mind went blank. All alone? What did he mean, all alone? There's an abandoned amusement park called Russia Village in Niigata Prefecture. It is one of the most well-known haunted spots in Japan and is often visited by TV ghost shows and famous YouTubers. It opened in 1993 as its first theme park for the purpose of cultural exchange with Russia. It attracted attention with its folk dance demonstrations, sales of crafts, local forest beer, display of life-sized mammoths and their skeleton specimens, and display of Baikal seals, which are an endemic species to Lake Baikal in Russia. However, in October 1999, the Niigata Chuo Bank went bankrupt and it was no longer possible to receive new loans, worsening its cash flow. Although it continued to make business efforts with material support from Khabarovsk, a city in Russia's regional government and others, it went into a state of suspension in November 2003, and with no prospect of recovery in business, it closed in April 2004. Although people were excited when it first opened, the number of visitors quickly dwindled, which was largely due to its low appeal to customers and the failure to attract repeat visitors. After the closure, the exhibits and equipment were left abandoned on the premises. Security was basically non-existent because of its remoteness, and there were many incidents of people going in to explore the place and vandalizing the facilities, leading to its deterioration. In 2009, a suspicious fire broke out, doing great damage to the hotel building. After this, some buildings were demolished and the exhibits were removed and disposed of. As of the end of 2020, only the church building and the hotel remain. I checked on Google Maps and you can actually still see a couple of buildings left. If you've been watching this video instead of just listening, you can see how creepy this abandoned theme park looks. But just to let you know, there haven't been any recorded accidents that resulted in deaths in the park. Regardless, here are some of the paranormal rumors that are going around. Number 1. If you take a photo in the hotel lobby, many orbs will appear in the photo. Number 2. You can feel someone's gaze coming from somewhere in the hotel and hear voices. Number 3. If you go to the second floor of the hotel where the guest rooms were located, you might hear voices telling you to get out or to go home. Number 4. the flooded basement. Take a look at how creepy and nasty it looks. Anyway, there are reports of people being chased by an apparition of an old woman and some who witnessed poltergeist activity. Also, a comedy trio called the Panthers went into the basement for some TV program and a black shadow crossed the camera. People who watched it on TV freaked out, although many people believe that it was just a hoax to scare the viewers. The truth is unknown. The very existence of a dilapidated ruin that not many people visit may attract unsettled spirits, attracting paranormal phenomena. This is a story from about 12 years ago. On this day, my friend Daisuke and I went around a number of haunted places for kimodameshi, which is a favorite pastime for some young Japanese people, in which they go to haunted places to basically scare themselves. I'd just gotten my driver's license and I wanted to enjoy my newfound freedom as well. After visiting various places like the abandoned ski resort on Mount Gozu, the abandoned hotel in Tsukioka Onsen, and an abandoned inn, we decided to go to the most famous Niigata Russia village in Agano City. I took some photos of our expedition, but the quality isn't great because we used a disposable camera and I retook the printed photos with my phone. So anyway, it was already past 4 a.m. and the surrounding area was starting to get light. The demolition of the buildings at Russia Village had started at this point, and we avoided going there during the day and early evening because there was a possibility some workers might still be there. Speaking of Russia Village, it's been featured on ghost shows and has become a famous haunted spot nationwide. But I actually went there when I was in junior high school when it was still open. I was quite surprised to find that several years later, it had closed and had become abandoned. On the way along National Route 290, I turned right at the intersection with an old sign that said Russia Village and went straight. We then spotted a sign that said Sasagami Cayman Golf Park on the left. Ignoring the no entry sign, we drove down the road until we encountered a sturdy iron gate that blocked off the rest of the way to Russia Village. We got out of the car to take a closer look, but there was a big padlock, so it was impossible to break it open. We looked around wondering how we could get in, when Daisuke pointed to the right and said, "Hey, I think we can climb over that part of the fence. It's pretty low." I looked over and agreed. This was the way in. Daisuke went up first and it took him no effort at all to get over it. I followed suit. We didn't realize until we started walking up the path that it was quite steep and long. Not to mention, the bushes that were overgrown on both sides made us paranoid about a possible bear attack. After a while of walking up in silence, we finally saw a sign coming up ahead that read, "Welcome to Niigata Russia Village." We began to see a cluster of large buildings appear the closer we got. The church building in the back, the symbol of Russia Village, towered eerily. Immediately to the right was the dilapidated clubhouse of the Cayman Golf Course, not pictured. I remember what it looked like when it was still open, and it was like two different worlds. First, we decided to look at the clubhouse because it was closest to us. Its roof and stairs had collapsed, so it was much more dilapidated than the other surrounding buildings. But just as we were about to step inside, a man appeared from within. He was wearing some kind of uniform and was holding an umbrella in one hand. He stopped walking and met our eyes. In a split second, I figured he must have been working for the demolition company. I heard Daisuke yelling at me to run, and we both turned around and started sprinting back down the road to the gate. This was bad. If he was indeed part of the crew to clean up Russia Village, he might report us to the authorities for trespassing. My car was parked outside the gate, so if other workers were showing up and reported my license plate to the police, they would track me down in no time. That gave me a burst of extra energy and I ran past Daisuke, desperate to get back ASAP. When I saw the gate, my car was still there and fortunately there were no police or other workers in sight. Relief washed over me and I stood there catching my breath. I don't think I've ever run that fast in my life, and when Daisuke finally caught up with me, he told me he never knew I was such a fast runner. We climbed back over the fence and quickly left the scene. In the end, I couldn't figure out whether the person was a demolition worker or just someone exploring the ruins like us, but judging from what he was wearing, I'm pretty sure he was the former. Anyway, a few days later, my phone rang. It was Daisuke and he asked whether I wanted to go back to Russia Village, but this time also with another friend, Akira. I didn't even hesitate. I was all in. He told me he was going to bring a flashlight with a radio feature that he bought from a second-hand store. He figured it would ease our fears a little bit if we had the radio on while we explored. I laughed and agreed that maybe it'll help indeed. On Sunday night, I met up with my friends in Agano City. Since we bumped into someone at 4 a.m. before, we decided to do it at night this time. We turned off of Route 290, drove up the pitch-black mountain road with no street lights, and stopped in front of the Iron Gate. Before getting out, however, Daisuke suggested we park off the bridge that we passed by earlier to decrease the chances of someone discovering our car. So that's what we did. When we got back to the gate on foot, we checked it and saw that it was still padlocked shut, so we climbed over the right side of the fenced area just like before. The long, steep road ahead was darker than the black of night, so we turned on our flashlights and began the walk uphill. We suddenly saw car headlights flicker through the trees, so we immediately turned off our lights, so I got nervous every time cars drove by. We turn off our lights each time and wait for it to disappear before turning the lights back on, repeating this process until we finally reached Russia Village. This was Akira's first time, so he was quite excited. We pointed our lights toward the buildings and were hit with how creepy everything looked. Then, in an attempt to alleviate his fear a little, Daisuke decided to finally try out the radio function of his flashlight that he purchased for this occasion. The only thing that came through was static. He tried several random channels, but no go. Nothing came through. Maybe the reception was bad up here. Daisuke kept turning the knob when all of a sudden, for a brief moment, mixed with the radio's noise, a low groan seemed to come through. The voice sounded male and like it was in pain and was clearly not of this world. Daisuke immediately switched the radio off and he said, "Did you guys just hear that?" Akira and I both nodded. I said it sounded like a man's voice and we started to freak out. We hadn't even entered any of the buildings yet and we were already experiencing strange phenomena. But we weren't going to turn away for the second time, so we started to head towards the dilapidated clubhouse where we'd run into that man before. Like I mentioned, it was severely deteriorated compared to other buildings, and it felt physically dangerous to go in. While exploring the area outside the clubhouse, suddenly we heard a loud banging sound coming from nearby. We all stopped dead in our tracks and looked at one another. We'd all heard it and pointed our lights to where the sound came from. For some reason, one of the golf carts that were parked there was rocking back and forth. I wondered out loud whether it was the wind, but Daisuke pointed out the obvious. The night air was as still as could be. Right. So I suggested that maybe someone was there. Daisuke asked us whether he should call out to whoever it might be, and without waiting for us to reply, he yelled out, "Hey, is anyone there?" Silence. He yelled out again, but there was no sign of anyone being there. Realizing this, I got goosebumps. The weird man's groan on the radio, and now that loud banging noise and the golf cart shaking for no reason. No matter, we ventured into the clubhouse. Once inside, we saw that the interior was just as bad as the exterior. The walls and the roof were crumbling in places, and some areas were down to its skeletal frame. I proceeded with caution, careful not to hurt myself, when I saw what appeared to be the changing room of a large onsen or public bath with lockers lining the wall. This room was clearly different from the other rooms, with a strange, eerie atmosphere lingering in the air. As I walked through the changing room lined with lockers towards the large onsen, I began to hear hushed voices. It sounded like several women talking, but it was so faint that I thought maybe I was being paranoid. That was until Akira, who had followed in after me, asked whether I could hear people talking. We were scared as hell, but we continued to move forward, and the whispering grew louder the closer we got to the onsen area. It felt as if they were all watching and whispering about us. The hairs on my arms stood on end. There were several rows of lockers in front of us, and I felt like I might see someone peeking out at us from behind one of them. It was terrifying. When we finally got to the onsen and looked inside, the place had been turned upside down. Everything was destroyed, and we felt an oppressive energy there that kept us from going in. After that, we climbed up the stairs to the second floor, which was just one large room. We were a bit tired, so we sat down and talked for about 20 minutes before deciding to leave to check out the church and the hotel. We walked through the pitch-black grounds, shining our flashlight all around us, and finally arrived in front of the large church building. Its palace-like appearance looked so creepy and out of place. We went in. There were creepy murals of faces painted on its pillars and walls, and old pamphlets and photos were scattered across the floor. After exploring the church for a while, I discovered a big piano in a small room behind the altar. Daisuke asked whether it might have been used for weddings, which made me wonder how many people were married in this church. Other than the entire place being extremely eerie, nothing happened. Next, we walked down the right corridor which led to the hotel. A short while later, a staircase that led down to the basement suddenly appeared in front of us. It felt like we shouldn't go down, but we did. And halfway down the stairs, there was a big room that went off to the side. In it were piles of garbage and countless chairs stacked neatly into a pyramid. It almost looked like a piece of artwork. As we stood at the entrance of the room, wondering who might have stacked the chairs like that, I became aware of the window off to the side. I couldn't help but feel like someone was looking in. I asked the guys if they felt the same, and they both agreed. Akira then suggested that we take a picture. "We might capture something," he said. This is what we took, but unfortunately, nothing was caught. We definitely felt like someone or something was watching us though. We continued down the stairs and finally arrived at the hotel lobby. What greeted us was even worse than everything we'd seen so far. The walls and ceiling, which was 3 stories high, were completely burnt and charred black. From what I've heard, a fire broke out a while ago, and it's believed to have been started by some vandals that broke into the premises. The blackened interior increased the eeriness tenfold. We silently stood there for a few seconds until Daisuke suggested that we go explore each room. The first room we walked into was a bar on the first floor. There were several empty liquor bottles sitting on the counter. Next was the restroom. The mirrors, sink, and even the toilet bowls were all smashed to pieces, and ducts were hanging out from the ceiling. The guest rooms on the first floor were relatively in good condition. It seems the fire didn't reach these rooms. Some of the furniture could have even been reused after a good clean. After looking around the first floor, we went up the stairs to the second floor. Again, the walls and ceilings of the hallway were badly burnt. We looked into a room which was particularly affected by the fire. Here, the walls that separated the rooms had burnt down and only the metal bed frames remained. I wondered whether this was where the fire started. I started to feel a bit lightheaded from the smell in there. We looked through the rooms one by one, enduring the unpleasant smell of burnt furniture, and found a room that was so clean that it was hard to believe it was on the same floor. Up on the third floor, there was a room with luxurious decorations that were clearly different from the other rooms we'd seen so far, so it must have been a VIP room. This beautiful room, however, made me feel extremely anxious and fearful, almost as if there was some kind of energy in there telling me to get out. The guys agreed that the room felt off, so we quickly left. After looking around the entire hotel, with not much more to note, we decided it was time to leave. Once outside, I noticed a suspicious entrance on the right side of the building. We had to check it out. When we walked in, it was just one large empty room. What could it have been used for, I wondered. That's when I saw another entrance at the back of the room, which led further in. As I was about to start walking towards it, Akira yelled out, "No, stop!" My heart almost stopped at his loud voice as he yanked my arm and pulled me back. "Look, it's completely flooded!" Surprised by what he said, I shone my light onto the ground. Sure enough, the entire space was flooded with dark, murky water. There were black oil-like substances floating on the surface and looked toxic as hell. As you can see in the picture, it was really hard to tell in the dark. Who knows how deep it was and what could have happened if I'd fallen into it. So, as much as we wanted to go check out the room in the back, we had to give up. We were pretty exhausted by this time, and although we hadn't explored the entire park yet, we decided to call it a day and come back another day. Two years ago, during the Obon holidays, I went on a kimodameshi with my friends from college. 7 of us in total. Once there, Girl A said she was too scared and wanted to stay in the car, so Boy B stayed with her and the remaining 5 of us went exploring. The guys had been drinking and they were messing with things, vandalizing, shouting, and I was honestly terrified thinking, "We're gonna get cursed for this." Lucky for us, nothing really happened. We took a picture as a kind of souvenir and went back to the car, but when we got there, Girl A was in a state of near hysteria. When we asked Boy B what had happened, he told us that right after we went inside, they started hearing groaning and footsteps coming from somewhere outside. They looked out but couldn't see anyone around. It stopped after a while, and just as their adrenaline and terror started to abate, A's phone started ringing. It was from an unknown number. They ignored it, but it kept ringing every few minutes. They decided to finally answer it, and they heard a man's faint voice saying,
"Get out. Don't come."
They both freaked out and turned off her phone, but the calls kept coming. We decided we should probably go get a cleansing ritual done. But first, we went back to Dee's house to print out the pictures we took. What we saw shocked us. The guys who were yelling out obscenities and being a dick, well, some parts of their bodies were missing. And in another picture, we saw a ton of orbs, and right next to me was an apparition of a man and a little girl. The girl's clothes looked like it had bloodstains on it. We all freaked out and went to the temple the very next day to get exorcised. The priest scolded us for going to a place like that as he performed an intricate ritual. Thankfully, nothing happened to any of us, but I've learnt my lesson. I will never go to a haunted place ever again. A few years ago, I was into visiting haunted places by myself. The Russia village was quite famous, especially for its terrifying basement, so I decided to sneak in. I don't really like writing long stories, so I'll keep it simple. There was a clown. The kind you see in horror movies. A creepy-ass clown. I froze for a few seconds when we came face to face, then bolted immediately. It didn't chase me or anything. Just stood there, staring at me. I made it home without incident, but the next day I became really ill. Maybe it was some kind of curse? I tried convincing myself it might have just been a painting or a statue, but the atmosphere said otherwise. This has left me completely traumatized. Don't go to haunted places lightly. If you see people doing it and think, I'll try it too, just please don't. My social studies teacher sometimes shares personal stories during class. He heard the following story from his friend. That summer, the teacher's friend, C, decided to go do kimodameshi at the Russia village with two of his friends, A and B. According to B, the basement was supposedly the scariest, so the three of them headed there. At one point, they were walking through the lobby and B, who was acting a bit cocky, kicked the chin of a large clown doll. He started taunting it, saying things like, "What the fuck are you? You're not even scary." When they got to the infamous basement, A, who had also been acting tough, suddenly froze in place. Still pumped with adrenaline, B and C started teasing him, but A remained silent, staring at something. He then let out a loud scream and bolted back up the stairs. B and C ran after him, not knowing what A got so freaked out about. After they were back outside, they continued to tease A, and they ended up going home without exploring any other place. A never said what he'd seen, but bad luck followed each of them in the aftermath. B, the one who kicked the clown, later fell off his motorbike on an empty road and injured his jaw. A, who had run away from the basement, came down with a high fever and was bedridden for about a week. As for C, nothing happened to him personally, but his cat's liver condition suddenly got worse. Location 10. Beheading Slope. Kubikirizaka is located in the Ichijo area of Utsunomiya City near Ichijo Middle School and literally translates to Beheading Slope. It's believed that in the past there was an execution site in this area and also a place where the severed heads were cleansed. The execution site dates back to the time when Utsunomiya Castle still stood back in the Heian period between the years 794 to 1185, but there are hardly any traces of the castle left today. The Ichijo Middle School was founded in 1947. Due to aging buildings and the need for earthquake safety, a new school building was constructed about 1 kilometer or 0.6 miles away, and the school was relocated in 2016. It's worth noting that this move was not due to any particular accidents or paranormal rumors. It was strictly for practical reasons. So, a place that's believed to be an execution ground centuries ago, and the presence of an abandoned school nearby. These are all elements that practically invite ghost stories and urban legends, aren't they? Apparently, there used to be a small spring-fed pond near Kubikirizaka. The pond was fenced off and entry was restricted. Surrounded by trees, the area was creepy even during the day. It was surrounded by concrete walls and was located much lower than ground level. Even without the fence, the water wasn't easily accessible. A small stream flowed from that pond down Kubikirizaka, and it's said that the water from that stream was used to wash the severed heads. Although there's no definitive evidence, some paranormal websites suggest that the pond had been buried and is now a parking lot. Some of the rumors flying around include 1. A ghost of a female who's believed to have been executed appears in a white kimono. A man was walking down that road when he saw a woman standing at the halfway point. He initially thought it was just another person, but as he got closer, the woman vanished into thin air. The man was terrified and ran all the way back home. 2. Strange noises such as footsteps approaching you from behind, but when you turn around, no one is there. 3. Voices coming from the general area asking for help. 4. Getting sick or nauseous when you're there. 5. If you trip and fall there, you'll die within 6 months. A bunch of youths visited the slope for a kimodameshi when one of them tripped and fell. 6 months later, he died in an accident. This became a huge deal in the local area and may have sparked this rumor. Seems really far-fetched if you ask me. So, the paranormal phenomena reported here are believed to be deeply connected to its historical background as a former execution ground. It's said that many of the people executed there may have been wrongfully accused, and the lingering grief and resentment from those unjust deaths are thought to remain in the area. There have also apparently been several suicides and violent crimes occurring near the slope. Some believe the energy of these unresolved spirits that are driven by past grudges influence susceptible people to do so. This cycle of tragedy is also thought to be, at least in part, due to the lack of proper memorial or spiritual rites performed at the former execution site. This is something that actually happened to me when I was around 20 years old. Back in my college days, it was a bit of a trend among my local friends to drive around aimlessly at night to unfamiliar places. One night, one of my friends suggested we visit a haunted spot called Kubikirizaka Pass, not the slope, in Nose Town, Osaka Prefecture, about an hour's drive from his house. So the four of us got into one car and left around midnight. We drove a long time down a dark and narrow mountain road, and the tunnel we were looking for finally came into view. There were no streetlights, just a pitch-black tunnel. The road was unpaved, the tunnel was narrow and low, and it gave off an intensely creepy vibe that all of us felt. Apparently, this area used to be an execution site where criminals were beheaded, and there's a rumor that if you stop inside the tunnel, a spirit will attach itself to you. Curious and craving a thrill, we entered the tunnel slowly. Of course, just passing through wasn't enough for us. We turned off the headlights and stopped in the middle of the tunnel. At that moment, I looked at the car's clock. It read 1:11. Something about that felt deeply unsettling, so we called it a night and went home. The next night, after getting out of the bath, I was drying my hair with a hairdryer. Suddenly, I started to hear a faint rustling or scratching sound. When I turned off the dryer, I realized that the radio cassette player on the desk, some distance away, was playing quietly. It was an old model, and you had to press the play button down hard to get it to play. There's no way it could have started on its own. Then, I looked over at the clock next to it. In the dim room, the glowing numbers showed 1:11. This is a story about 2 murder cases that occurred in an apartment complex in my hometown and the deep-rooted connection between the land around the site and its dark history. I won't name the apartment building, but it's quite well known locally. The first incident was even broadcast live on the news at the time. a man affiliated with an organized crime group barricaded himself inside the apartment of his girlfriend. Despite hours of police negotiation, he ultimately shot her in the head and then turned the gun on himself, dying at the scene. The second incident is said to have inspired a movie. It involved the stabbing of 4 people, and this too happened in the same apartment building. From the outside, it looks like a stylish modern complex with fashionable boutiques occupying the first-floor retail spaces. If you didn't know any better, you'd think it was just a chic place to live. Even now, when I happen to pass by, I instinctively glance up at the apartment. I've noticed that the lights are on, so people still live there. The land on which the apartment stands was once the site of a prison and an execution ground. The street in front of it was even called Kubikirizaka, or Beheading Slope. Whether it's a cursed land or something else, I don't know, but I can't help thinking that for 2 horrific crimes to occur in the same apartment, something beyond coincidence must be at work. I run a hair salon, and this is a true story I heard from one of my customers, Hiromi. She's 31 now, but when she was in her senior year of high school, she and 5 friends decided to go on a kimodameshi. The place they chose was called Kubikirizaka, a spot near her high school. Physically, it's just an ordinary slope with a traffic mirror at the corner, nothing particularly remarkable. However, at her school, it was well known as a haunted location. That night, after she and her 5 friends arrived at the slope, they laughed and joked, calling out whether anyone was there and saying disappointedly that nothing was happening. All the while, they took photos with their flip phones. After a few minutes of having fun, one of her friends who was looking through the photos they'd just taken stopped everyone. They gathered around her and looked at the picture she was staring at. In it, they saw countless faces reflected in the traffic mirror. It wasn't theirs. Terrified, they immediately ran from the place. The next day at school, one of their friends, Satsuki, was absent. Worried, Hiromi called and asked why she hadn't come, and Satsuki told her that when she got home later that night, her mother didn't let her into the house. Apparently, her mum has psychic abilities and sensed her daughter had brought something untoward back with her. She took her to a spiritual medium before allowing her to come home. So, even though Kubikirizaka is just an ordinary slope in an ordinary neighborhood, it's truly a terrifying place. I don't even know how anyone can live by it. Location 11. Old Amagi Tunnel. The Old Amagi Tunnel is a historical tunnel in Shizuoka Prefecture that is known nationwide as a haunted location and was completed in 1905. At 445.5 meters, or about 1,460 feet long, it was Japan's first stone-built road tunnel and remains the longest existing stone road tunnel in the country. Its official name is Amagi-san Zuido. In 2001, it was designated a national cultural property, the first road tunnel in Japan to receive this status. It is also recognized as one of Japan's top 100 roads. By day, the tunnel appears peaceful, surrounded by nature. But once night falls, the atmosphere turns ominous. Let's explore the chilling rumors associated with the old Amagi Tunnel. Number 1. It's said that several people died during the tunnel's construction. The ghosts seen inside may be those very individuals. Some speculate that harsh labor conditions could be the reason these spirits remain in unrest. Number 2. There are numerous reports of a female ghost seen inside the tunnel. Some say she follows you as you walk through or appears when you look into your rearview mirror while driving. Others claim she even speaks to passers-by. Number 3. There's also talk of a samurai ghost hovering around the tunnel. This spirit may be linked to an old grave that was destroyed during construction. Though unconfirmed, this story has been passed down for generations. Number 4. Mysterious handprints appearing on cars after passing through. Number 5. Some report cars breaking down or engines stalling inside the tunnel. Others say the car stereo gets distorted by static. Number 6. Like any other haunted spots, people claim they've accidentally captured ghostly images at the old Amagi tunnel. Here's a popular Japanese YouTuber who goes to haunted places. He took pictures of the 2 men walking ahead of him. He remained stationary while the 2 others walked slowly ahead of him. Here's the first photo. Can you see anything strange? No. No, you can't because it's perfectly normal. Now for the second photo. You can see the man on the left's head is slightly elongated. The man on the right, however, isn't as blurry and they were walking at the same pace. If it ended here, I wouldn't get too excited over it. But take a look at the final photo. Here, the guy's shoulder and head has become totally misshapen and disproportionate to the rest of his body. And again, the guy on the right is perfectly normal. What do you guys think? Could it have just been the trick of light? It very well could be, but if that's the case, shouldn't the man on the left also be distorted? Let me know what you think in the comments below. So, the old Amagi tunnel seems to include nearly every classic ghost tunnel phenomenon. So why is this place so haunted? Well, there's a rumor that a woman was assaulted and murdered inside the tunnel. Though unverified, when 2 men and 1 woman visit together, paranormal events tend to occur, suggesting the presence of a restless female spirit. One persistent rumor is that workers who died during construction were not given proper burials, but were instead entombed in the tunnel walls as human pillars. Though it sounds like folklore, there was a real case in Hokkaido's Jomon Tunnel where human bones were found in the tunnel walls. So this theory can't be completely dismissed. Despite the many creepy rumors surrounding the old Amagi tunnel, it remains a fascinating historical site as an important cultural property. Rather than visiting for cheap thrills, it might be best to explore it respectfully as part of a sightseeing trip. In my hometown of Izu, the old Amagi tunnel is widely known as a haunted spot. About 7 years ago, my friend Imoto went there with 2 of his male friends. Their goal was to experience something paranormal, of course. The tunnel, located deep in the forest, gave them chills from the moment they arrived. According to rumors, if you stop your car at the center of the tunnel and honk the horn 3 times, something eerie is supposed to happen. They gave it a try, but nothing happened. Disappointed, the 3 of them got out and walked to the tunnel exit to explore the surroundings. It was then that a faint woman's voice echoed from within the tunnel. Frightened, Imoto and his friends rushed back to their car to leave, but to their horror, the engine wouldn't start. Panicking, the 3 of them grew increasingly terrified as the woman's voice seemed to draw closer. Then, miraculously, the engine roared back to life and the car finally moved. During the drive back home, no one uttered a single word. They simply drove in silence, desperate to get back home. Once they returned to the relatively well-lit residential area and began to feel safe again, they finally exchanged words. Having made it back safely, the fear started to subside and they even admitted the experience had been thrilling. But that feeling was short-lived. As soon as they got out of the car, what they saw left them speechless. Countless handprints all over the car. This happened about 20 years ago. I was on a motorcycle trip with 3 of my friends. We decided to travel to the Amagi area. We stayed at a family-run inn about 30 minutes by bike from the old Amagi tunnel. Part of our itinerary included visiting a haunted spot in the middle of the night, so it was perfect. When night fell, we headed toward the tunnel and arrived at the trailhead. The road to the tunnel was gravel and quite tricky to ride on, so we carefully drove forward. Once outside the tunnel entrance, we parked our bikes and began walking into the tunnel. We passed through without incident and continued exploring the area on foot. Nothing happened, so we eventually went back to our bikes. I was last in line as we began riding back down the gravel path. Because it was downhill, we weren't riding very fast, but suddenly the other 3 sped up. I was confused and stayed at my current speed, slowly going down. Then I realized I hadn't checked my mirrors once. When I did, I expected to see complete darkness behind me. There were no streetlights after all. But instead, what I saw reflected was vividly lit, like it was broad daylight, and I saw several people standing off to the side. I panicked. I stopped the bike, turned around, and began apologizing frantically about going there and making loud noises on our bikes. I desperately apologized over and over. When I turned around, it was pitch black, of course, and I saw nothing. Then a breeze blew in the downhill direction as if chasing after my 3 friends. Oh, and by the way, I did manage to safely regroup with them. When I asked them why they suddenly sped up, they replied that when they looked in their rearview mirror, they saw a bunch of figures clinging onto my shoulders and waist. To this day, I still wonder, what would have happened to me if I hadn't stopped, turned around, and apologized? It was without a question the scariest mountain road I've ever ridden through. Location 12. The Old Honzaka Tunnel. The Old Honzaka Tunnel refers to the former tunnel located on National Route 362, which connects Aichi and Shizuoka prefectures. It was opened in 1915, but due to deterioration and the risk of collapse, it is no longer accessible today, with its entrance now located on private property. It's a haunted spot that has been visited by TV ghost shows and famous YouTubers. Currently, the new Honzaka Tunnel, which opened in 1978, is used. Some of the paranormal rumors within this tunnel include seeing a woman hanging upside down from the ceiling. She then chases you by crawling or lands on the roof of your car. Honestly, just imagining that is terrifying. Also, if you honk your horn 3 times in the tunnel, a ghost will appear. This is a classic one that exists in other tunnels. It's also said that most of the spirits that appear are female. The reason for this could stem all the way back to the Edo period between 1603 and 1868. The Himekaido, which translates to the Princess Route, was an inland detour and is said to have been used by noble women avoiding the harsh inspections at stations, where even body searches occurred. But the Himekaido and Old Honzaka Tunnel are not the same. The tunnel didn't exist back then, so nothing can be confirmed. A psychic has determined that one of the female ghosts here was a middle-aged or elderly woman, not a noble lady. She may have worked in the red light district, was beaten by a man, and left for dead near this spot in the early 1900s. Spirits of laborers carrying palanquins who may have died from exhaustion have also been detected here. There's a small shack at the Aichi side entrance of the tunnel and is said to be a gathering place for spirits. This shack is one of the tunnel's more creepy features. It's now empty, though at one point it apparently contained an office desk. It's possible that someone had just dumped their desk in there because they didn't want to pay disposal fees. I used to live in the area. Up until about 25 years ago, I would often visit the tunnel out of thrill-seeking curiosity. But ever since the last time I went, I've had unexplained late-night visitors. This place was so notorious that even our school teachers would share terrifying stories they heard from former students. Those who claimed to be spiritually sensitive always warned people to never go there. This was common knowledge back in my high school and university days, 30 years ago. I've heard many stories of girls who were sensitive to the paranormal, who were unwillingly brought there by friends or boyfriends, only to be possessed or experience lingering spiritual disturbances. When I first got my driver's license, I too visited this place with friends out of sheer curiosity. I never saw a ghost, nor did I feel anything strange at the time. However, from that point on, something began happening. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd be awakened by the sound of the front door opening. It was an old sliding door that made loud rattling noises every time it was opened or closed, followed by footsteps walking through the house and into my room. And the footsteps would stop right next to my bed. I'd always be in a state of sleep paralysis, unable to move for several minutes. But I could open my eyes slightly, and when I did, I'd see a dark figure staring down at me from beside my pillow. Occasionally, my family would also hear someone walking towards my room. Nothing further has ever happened, but this has been continuing for 25 years. Oddly enough, it hasn't brought me bad luck. In fact, it's helped me in unexpected ways. For example, when I have the flu and would unknowingly throw off my blanket while passed out from a high fever, something would grab my shoulder or neck violently and wake me up, likely saving me from getting sicker. And that's why I've never performed any spiritual cleansing or exorcism. I've just left it alone. One thing I did do, though, is to completely stop visiting haunted places. When I was a child, our family passed through the old Honzaka tunnel on the way home from my mum's parents' house. My dad was driving. Somewhere in the middle of the tunnel, I clearly saw a shadowy figure, but no one else seemed to notice it. We passed right through, and I couldn't shake off a deep chill that settled over me. Later, we stopped at a diner for dinner. The moment we stepped inside, the chill disappeared. When we stepped back out after we finished eating, it began to rain. My dad told us to wait under the roof and he'll go get the car, and at that moment, I saw something horrifying. A pitch-black figure appeared behind him and slammed his head into a signboard. I saw him collapse onto the ground. He had cut his head and was bleeding. We somehow made it home, but I later found out that my dad had absolutely no memory of driving us back. He thought he was unconscious the entire time. Later, he asked us whether we said anything to him when he hit his head, and Mum and I shook our heads. Years later, when I heard this story again as an adult, he told me he heard someone say,
"Die, you worthless piece of shit."
To this day, we wonder if something followed us out of that tunnel. Location 13. Sakura Dam. Surprisingly, one of Japan's most colossal dams also ranks among the country's most infamous haunted locations. The dam itself saw numerous deaths during its 3-year construction phase, and the 2 tunnels flanking it are also said to be haunted. The dam was finished in 1956 and straddles the border between Hamamatsu City in Shizuoka Prefecture and Toyone Kitashitara District in Aichi Prefecture. It's located on the midstream section of the Tenyu River and boasts the 9th tallest height at 155.5 meters or 510 feet and the 8th largest reservoir volume in Japan. It's considered a milestone in Japan's post-war civil engineering history, paving the way for widespread use of heavy machinery such as dump trucks, bulldozers, and hydraulic excavators. Despite being a landmark project, its construction led to 96 fatalities. These deaths resulted from natural disasters like typhoons and heavy rain, as well as accidents involving falls and landslides. Back then, safety awareness was limited. Many workers didn't even wear helmets, which likely contributed to the high death toll. Safety protocols in construction sites were later reviewed following these deaths. Next to the Sakuma Electric Power Museum, which explains the dam's mechanisms and history, stands a memorial monument honoring the 96 workers who died during construction. You can't see their names in this photo because they're engraved on the back of the monument. Sakuma Dam plays a crucial role in Japan's civil engineering legacy, but it's also a well-known haunted location due to numerous sightings of spirits, both around the dam and in the surrounding tunnels. Visitors must pass through multiple tunnels to reach Sakuma Dam. Among them, the Sakuma No. 2 tunnel is notorious for ghost sightings. Common reports include knocking sounds on the roof or windows of moving cars and multiple human figures seen walking through the tunnel. But it's not just the tunnels. The dam itself is also said to be haunted. Though they could be the spirits of the 96 workers who lost their lives, the dam has also had multiple suicide deaths, leading some to believe that the spirits are those individuals rather than the construction workers. Other phenomena include reports of mysterious lights floating above the reservoir, drum-like sounds echoing through the night, and sightings of multiple shadowy figures walking inside Unagidaru Tunnel, one of the many tunnels around the dam. Even in modern times, people share experiences such as hearing eerie groans near the dam at night or seeing glowing dots moving across the lake's surface. While wind and other natural factors could explain some of these, the tragic history seems to amplify the supernatural narrative. One chilling story surrounding Sakuma Dam is that an entire village lies submerged beneath it, like the rumors surrounding Inunaki Village in Fukuoka Prefecture. I did a deep dive on that, by the way, and it's my best performing video, so if you guys haven't watched it yet, I've put a link at the end of this video. While it might sound like an urban legend, for Sakuma Dam, it's actually true. During the construction of it, 4 settlements, including part of Toyama Village in Aichi Prefecture, were submerged in 1955, a whopping 294 households in total, giving rise to the nickname Cursed Village. This fact may further contribute to the dam's haunted reputation. Now, the environment surrounding Sakuma Dam lends scientific and cultural weight to its urban legends. The Tendyu River Basin is geologically unstable, and the high rate of accidents during construction is a documented fact. The area's quiet atmosphere and the acoustic effects of wind and water often produce strange sounds. Reflections or fog on the lake can easily be mistaken for ghostly lights. The vengeful spirit rumors may stem from a mix of nostalgia for lost communities and sympathy for the 96 deceased workers. From a folkloric perspective, the belief in punishment for tampering with nature and wandering souls is deeply rooted in Japanese tradition, perfectly aligned with Sakuma Dam's history. One local researcher noted, the lights and sounds are natural phenomena, but the memories of lost lives give them a spiritual aura. Today, Sakuma Dam attracts around 100,000 visitors annually. Lake Sakuma has been selected as one of the top 100 dam lakes in Japan, and its surrounding cherry blossoms and campgrounds are popular tourist attractions. However, the legend of the cursed village still lives on among locals and paranormal enthusiasts. One elderly resident stated, "There's always been something strange about the dam at night," while another remarked, "Sometimes you hear odd noises near the lake shore." Before we get into people's various experiences, here's a cold case murder that happened close to the dam. This is the account of an incident known as the Sakura Dam boxed murder case. At around 2:20 p.m. on January 26, 1986, a man fishing found what appeared to be human bones in a box on the right bank of Sakura Dam Lake and reported it to the police. The box was made of plywood and was about 40 meters or 130 feet down a cliff from the Sakura Line Road. The man kicked it when he discovered it, causing bones to spill out. Police began investigating whether they were human remains. Subsequent investigation confirmed that the bones were indeed human. Here's what was revealed in the 6 months following the discovery. The wooden box measured 36 centimeters, 14 inches high, 46 centimeters, 18 inches wide, and 90 centimeters, 35 inches long. It was lined with a white patterned tin plate on the outside and plywood on the inside. It appeared to be a trunk to store clothes with a lid secured by 2 hinges and handles on both sides. The box had been wrapped multiple times with plastic-like rope. It was manufactured by a company in Ibaraki Prefecture and was sold nationwide between 1955 and 1969. The bones belonged to one human body, fully intact and folded inside without signs of fractures. Inside the box were also 3 to 4 chunks of concrete believed to serve as weights. It was heavily soiled with mud, and it was found due to the dam's lowered water level. The remains were wearing a slip, a type of woman's undergarment, suggesting the victim was female. The particular slip was sold nationwide from January 1973 to September 1975. 26 teeth were found, 9 of which had signs of dental work. Investigators consulted specialists in Aichi, Shizuoka, and Nagano prefectures to try to identify the victim. The victim was believed to be a petite woman aged between 30 and 50. Estimated time of death was between 2 and 10 years prior to its discovery. Further search of the site uncovered 2 molars and 2 to 3 strands of hair, though it's unclear if they belonged to the woman. This is what had been discovered 6 months after the case broke. The following are some reasons why the investigation was difficult. 1. Although the dental work was distinctive, dentists couldn't remember patients from 10 years ago, as records are usually only kept for 5 years. 2. The site had over 2,000 construction workers employed at the time, making it impossible to narrow down suspects. 3. In Aichi, Shizuoka, Nagano, and Gifu prefectures, there were about 1,900 missing persons who matched the age range. Investigators checked 1,700 identities but found no match. And 4. Simply put, the scope of the investigation was too broad. And that's where it ends. To this day, the victim has not been identified and the murderer never caught. This is a story from about 25 years ago when I was still a student. At the time, I was approaching graduation and had just obtained my driver's license. I often went on long drives simply to kill time. On this particular day, around 9 p.m., I set out from my hometown with a friend, heading to Sakura Dam in Hamamatsu, a location well known in the prefecture as a haunted spot. Since it's located quite close to the Nagano border, the trip took some time, but we eventually arrived safely. The area around the dam was much colder than the city center, and snow had started to accumulate. Unaccustomed to seeing snow and thrilled by the sight of the massive dam, our excitement grew and we began running around on the walkway above the dam. After a while, the cold began to set in and we decided to return to the car. That's when we noticed something strange. Alongside our footprints in the snow, there was a third set of footprints. As I looked more closely, I saw the footprints ended right in front of the dam's handrail. At that moment, I froze. I didn't say anything out loud. I didn't want to scare my friend, but more than that, I was afraid that voicing it would make the fear real and consume me. We reached the car, our excitement dulled by the cold, and I decided to head home. I vividly remember getting lost on the way back and ending up at the crematorium, which gave me another set of chills on a whole other level. Alright guys, and that wraps up the entire Chubu region of Japan. Again, if you want to hear about Aokigahara, also known as the Suicide Forest or the Sea of Trees, don't worry, it will be uploaded sometime in the near future, so keep your eyes peeled. I hope you all had a great weekend, thanks for tuning in as usual, and see you again soon. Cheers.